This week's episode of Tea Talk with Oil Pump is brought to you by Dole. We have 6 favorite varieties just in from tropical Hawaii, all ready to serve. Sliced, chunks, spears, tidbits, crushed juice, and fruit cocktails too. Visit your local grocery store today to see the difference Dole makes.
The Gilded Age, a period marked by industrialization. But beneath the illusion that America was prospering in every way, trouble was brewing. Following the Civil War, the government began providing funds for the expansion and development of transportation and communication systems. These railroads were hugely instrumental in opening new markets throughout North America. The development of the Transcontinental Railroad resulted in a huge increase in the number of farms out west, the demand for lumber and other commodities, and the growth of large cities. The growth of business as a result of railroad expansion also resulted in monopolies. Tycoons like Andrew Carnegie were geniuses at circumventing competition. Carnegie led the steel industry through the process of vertical integration. Today, we have Mr. Carnegie here himself to give us a little insight on what it means to be what his critics like to call him, a robber baron.
So, Mr. Carnegie, sir, can you explain to me exactly how you became a steel tycoon? Also, what is the method of vertical integration that you adopted for your business?
Well, I was first introduced to the world of industry under the wing of Thomas Scott, who ran the Pennsylvania Railroad. After the Civil War, I saw a large need for iron products and found myself switching up business interests to the iron and steel industries. At this point in my life, I had acquired enough business contacts in the railroad industry from working with Scott to be able to provide them with something they needed, which was steel. My company was founded on vertical integration. In short, I can teach you one thing about it. The way to become rich is to put all your eggs into one basket and then watch that basket.
And in 1882, you experienced a workers' strike at your Homestead plant. Can you tell me what that was like for you? What was your relationship with labor like in general?
Since I am now old and retired, I find it important to clear up all of my vices now before I eventually pass. My reputation never fully recovered after Homestead, which attracted a lot of public sympathy for the strikers involved. In 1914, I asked a man named William Dickinson, a former partner of mine, to write me an article that would help put me right with the public. This was all I wanted, and nothing else. He denied me the request, feeling that despite my many writings showing sympathy towards the working man's plight, I was still responsible for enacting contradictory to my views, thus causing tensions with my workers. The last thing I will say on this matter is that I didn't hate or like unions. I simply changed my labor policies in response to changes in the industry. But does that really make me as evil as my critics paint me?
One last question I have for you today. Do you align with social Darwinism? To what extent?
Yes, I would say social Darwinism explains our modern society today. While the law of competition may be sometimes hard for the individual, it is best for the race because it ensures the survival of the fittest in every department. While some may have viewed the way I run my factories as brutal and unforgiving, I dissent with the belief that creating a competitive nature in a work environment is part of a perfect brew for profit. Furthermore, I do not acquire capital for the purposes of greed. I feel that the rich, such as myself, have such an altruistic duty to use their wealth to give back to the poorer classes.
For today's special segment on Tea Talk with Oil Pump, we are going to be discussing the haunted, well, possibly haunted, secret underground subway system of New York. This was built in the 19th century, and for our special guest, we have here with us Karen Vu. Okay, so in 1904, New York's modern subway system officially opened. But what people don't know is that it was not actually the first subway. So in the 1860s, the streets of New York City were overcrowded, just lots of people, streetcars, horses. So this guy named Alfred Beach decided, hey, I'm going to secretly construct a brand new air-powered train underground. Due to the corruption of the Public Works Commissioner, William Tweed, Beach had to get consent to build his tunnel by pretending it was a mail delivery system. They worked hard in the dark of night to build it, and the whole thing was kept a secret up until the point where it got leaked to the press, so they had no choice but to go public. They opened in 1870, and it was a huge success, carrying over 400,000 passengers just in the first year of its opening. After Tweed was put in prison for his corruption, Beach finally got permission to continue his work on the subway. But unfortunately, his private investors were disappearing fast, and this was due to the beginnings of an economic crisis. The subway was uncompleted and remained hidden under the city, completely sealed up, until it became absorbed into the present-day City Hall station. There are paranormal experts who say that apparitions are roaming the transit system that include spirits at the City Hall stop, there's a phantom train at Astor Place, and they've even spotted the beloved dog of former President FDR. Some subway riders say that they can spot Fala, FDR's dog, at the very same spot that he used to wait for his owner. At least one person has reported boarding on a phantom train at Astor Place. What do you think of that?
Wait, so someone boarded on a ghost train, an invisible ghost train, and
I mean, I guess so. We don't really know. Yeah, so apparently this ghost train was being built in the beginning of the 20th century, and the workers, they heard strange noises coming from it. And they realized that these were words that were being chanted by apparently the spirits of the Lenape Indians who died in a nearby massacre hundreds of years ago. Finally, for this segment, we're going to end it with a quote by spokesman Adam Lisberg. While it's tempting to blame ghosts for the occasional signal problem or equipment delay, we'll keep our focus on the more than 6 million real-life customers who ride the subway on our busiest days.
yeah, that's the only guy who makes sense in this whole segment.
Social Darwinism perpetuated the rise of racist theories during the Gilded Age. These theories, along with the Supreme Court decision in the Plessy versus Ferguson case, justified discrimination, segregation, and even violence against African Americans. After Reconstruction ended, the Black Code segregated public facilities such as railroad cars, restrooms, and schools. Through the 14th Amendment granted all citizens equal protection of the laws, the Supreme Court had ruled that the 14th Amendment applied only to national citizenship rights, not to rights derived from state citizenship. The confinement of American Indians to reservations with assimilation policies reduced the American Indians' population drastically and threatened native culture. In order to increase the amount of land available to settlers, the government violated several treaties with the Native Americans, resulting in bloody conflicts. Our next guest hails straight from the grave and is no other than Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president.
Former President Lincoln. Despite being victorious in the Civil War, disenfranchisement has become prevalent throughout the South with the reversal of progress made during Reconstruction. Do you have any advice for post-Reconstruction government officials in how to handle the situation?
Our founding fathers created the Constitution to develop a national government to have more power over the states. I fought during the Civil War and beat the Confederacy in order to establish the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. I have always hated slavery, I think as much as any abolitionist. I did not, however, spend my presidency fighting for African American freedom before the law for the South to continue to undermine the Constitution. The Plessy v. Ferguson case was handled poorly, and what sparked the justification for the disenfranchisement of the South and the emergence of the Jim Crow laws, separate but equal, violates the 14th Amendment, which states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The Supreme Court and state legislations must abide by the Constitution and give African Americans the right they deserve.
My final question for you is, do you agree with the current Native American policies? What would you do differently?
I consider myself fairly moderate in my political leanings, and as many Americans like myself during this time, I do believe that Native Americans are not simply subhuman. I disagree with the government's decision to violate several treaties with the Native Americans in order to increase the amount of land available to settlers. The government should not have let Native American relations escalate to the level of conflict it did. Violence, including the Sand Creek Massacre and attack at Wounded Knee, was a massive intrusion on Indian land. I sincerely believe the natives are worthy of respect and are human like the rest of us, and I would respect their wishes. Containing the natives in small reservations and the attempt to assimilate them into American culture through the Dawes Act violates Native American rights. I believe Congress should abide by the Native American treaties in order to maintain peaceful relations.
The resulting growth in business led many businessmen to seek influence and control in markets outside the U.S. During the 1890s, there were calls to annex Hawaii in order to control the sugar production. Following the Spanish-American War, the U.S. gained control of the Philippines. In the late 1800s, the U.S. also established an open-door policy with China, which allowed U.S. businesses access to the Chinese market. Finally, the U.S. gained influence in Latin America through numerous American-owned sugar companies in Puerto Rico. In all, the Gilded Age represented a period of global expansion of American political and economic influence. Here is the very last Hawaiian queen, Queen Lil, talking to us about her experience and opinion of American imperialism.
Aloha, Queen Lil. Welcome to Tea Talk with Oil Pump. To start, how do you feel about American settlement of Hawaii in general? What is your opinion of Sanford Dole?
My opinions about American intrusion on Hawaiian soil are strong and will not be changed lest future American administrations do something to aid us in our long struggle for sovereignty. The cause of Hawaiian independence is larger and dearer than the life of any man connected with it, including Sanford Dole. The American plantation owners have little respect for our culture and overall well-being as a nation. Sanford Dole's Committee of Safety overthrew me in order to protect their own selfish economic interests and established a new government that forced westernization upon us through religion and government. His actions reflect that of the American nation as a whole and were a detriment to the Hawaiian people. Furthermore, the American planters that aided him are responsible for bringing diseases that trampled on our native flora and fauna, which I cannot condone.
We know that you were arrested after a failed insurrection by Robert Wilcox on your behalf. Could you give us some idea of what imprisonment was like for you? How were you treated by the Americans?
That first night of my imprisonment was the longest night I've ever passed in my life. It seemed as though the dawn of day would never come. The feelings of one who has been imprisoned, politically or otherwise, can only be understood by a person who has passed through the ordeal. I was placed under house arrest on the grounds of treason. The Americans drove me to a palace where guards roamed the premises 24/7. Government officers threatened to shoot me and 6 others if I refused to sign papers and comply with their agenda to gain further control of Hawaii. It was the intention of the officers of the government to humiliate me by imprisoning me, but my spirits rose above that. I was a martyr to the cause of my people and was proud of it.
How would you compare Presidents Grover Cleveland and William McKinley?
Overall, President Cleveland was more sympathetic to us Hawaiians and our sovereignty, while McKinley had more concern for the American planters. Cleveland offered to reinstate me in exchange for amnesty of the American coup, which I reluctantly agreed to. He was passive and refused to use force to overthrow me. In contrast, McKinley sided with the planters and was eager to annex Hawaii to the United States by first negotiating a treaty, then utilizing the Pearl Harbor naval base to persuade Congress to formally approve annexation.
Mahalo for your time.
If you are listening to this song right now and recognize it from Lilo and Stitch, you would be right. This is Queen Lil's Aloha Oi, which remains to this day the most well-known Hawaiian song. Translated as Farewell to Thee, it ultimately became a somber allusion to the sun setting on the Kingdom of Hawaii, and for our purposes, the sun setting on this podcast.
Raindrops, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot.